when Robert married and he had his son,
You felt it was no longer your responsibility to carry on the family line.
Right. Yes, that's it exactly. You know, Counselor, recently I'd become very much aware that there were fewer days ahead than there are behind. But I took some comfort from the fact that the family would go on. But now there'll be no more Picards.
Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the starship Enterprise.
Trekkie Dave here. Just wanting to do one last video in 2021. And as it's Christmas time, I thought it would be, as I did a video for Halloween, and like I said at the beginning when I started the channel, YouTubers will do a video at holidays. So as I already did a Halloween video, and I did a Thanksgiving video, themed video, I thought it would be neat to do a Christmas video to end the year. So that's why I wanted to do this video specifically. And it will be the last video of this year, and it's Christmas themed. So, so the topic that I wanted to address is a film that I just love. It's not my favorite Star Trek film, but it's a film that I've loved since I've seen it. And when I saw the film, I recognized that there were thematic meanings in the film, both visually and from a story standpoint, and technically as well with this film, which is interesting. And I recognized that when I saw the film. So it wasn't one of my favorite films when I saw it. It's not like I left the theater and I'm like, this is the greatest film ever made. But I appreciated what I perceived, or in my perspective, the deeper themes of the film. The film I'm talking about is a film called Star Trek Generations. This was a film that came out in 1994, and I saw it in the theater like I've seen every Star Trek film. And I love this film. I unapologetically love this film, even if it has issues here and there. It's not a perfect film, but I appreciate it for what it is, and I love this film. And the film was directed by, I'm not too familiar with him. The director's name is David Carson, and I believe that he was one of the Next Generation. So this is a Star Trek Next Generation movie, and I believe that he was a director on the Next Generation television show. That's where his pedigree comes from. So he's not, I don't know how many actual movies he's done, but I love what he did with this film, and I love this film. This film, kind of funny, has always been reminiscent to me of Star Trek V, The Final Frontier. I love that film as well. Even though it has issues, I've always loved that film. And that's a whole other thing. I can maybe do a video next year if I continue to do videos covering off what I love. But it's got some similarities where it's not a perfect film, but I love what it does do. And one of the things I find very interesting about both those films, that as time goes on, I appreciate them even more. And to me, that tells me that both of these films are much better films than they're generally regarded as. And what initiated me to do this video, or to script this idea, was that recently I've seen this really funny, actually somebody who's a friend of mine, or who I consider a friend, but he has a very, very strong opinion that I found quite funny. Just, is Star Trek Generations a Christmas movie? Well, to me, it's obvious. It's obviously a Christmas movie. And just from hearing his comments on it. Like, he's just so very strong on why it's not a Christmas movie. And he actually took me aback by just how strong he was in it. It wasn't like, yeah, it kind of is. It's got a Christmas tree in it. No, it's like, I think the comment that he made, or that you know, I overheard him say, is, you know, just because a movie has a Christmas tree in it doesn't make it a Christmas movie. And I thought that was such a funny way of looking at this film, because I haven't, prior to hearing that, I hadn't really overly thought about what people thought about this. I just automatically thought, well, yeah, it's obviously a Christmas movie. And then when he said that, I had to think about it. I'm like, okay, well, he's clearly just looking at a very surface take on this, because having absorbed this film, like, I watch this film every year at Christmas, and I have for years. So to me, it's an obvious Christmas movie for so many thematic reasons. But yeah, if you're just looking at the very surface, then that's an interesting take. And I was taken aback by it because I thought it was kind of funny. And I thought, okay, well, you know what? I want to communicate to him why he maybe needs to look at it a little bit deeper than just that. So is Star Trek Generations a Christmas movie? In my opinion, it absolutely is. My wife, Julie, is directing like always, because she always helps me. Julie, do you consider, you've seen the film, do you consider Star Trek Generations a Christmas movie?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay,
for sure.
Okay. So I wrote down a couple of quick little things, like, because this isn't a complicated video, and I'm just going to do the very basics of it. But at the same time, I don't want to miss something that's obvious. And I got to take my glasses off because my eyesight, like always, is just horrid. Is Star Trek Generations a Christmas movie? Okay. And I think what's going on here, where people don't think it is, they may not even be consciously aware of why they think it is or why they think it isn't. But I can tell you why I think it is, and then why I probably think Julie thinks it is, without having really discussed it with her, but it seems obvious to me, right? So just on the basics of visual imagery alone, I agree with my friend that you know, it has a Christmas tree in it. So I think what might be happening here is more how a person maybe defines a Christmas film. That's the only thing I could kind of sort of think of. Like, if you approach this film from a purely secular, mainstream perspective, comparing this film to, say, other secular Christmas films, like, say, something like, I don't know, National Lampoon's Vacation, per se, then your perspective may be that this film really isn't a Christmas film, right? Because I've heard this debate about other films as well. Die Hard's one that comes up as well. And and not to go down a rabbit hole here, we don't have time, but I also think that's a Christmas film, but for other reasons. But I can get into that if I ever do a video on Die Hard, which I'm not, but I want to keep my content track. Like, there's, you know, like, for example, there's no Christmas music in it. It doesn't have Santa Claus in it, or something like really an obvious mainstream National Lampoon's movie would have, right? From a more, like, say, spiritual or how would you say, more of a religious standpoint, I think that there are elements in this film, both visually and story-wise, that put this film in that category of Christmas, and more specifically, Christian, okay? There's nothing more Christian than Christmas, and it's clear to me that the makers of this film purposely, by the way they shot it and by the way that they put story elements into this film, specifically did that to give that message to us, the audience, that there's more going on here, that this is it's kind of interesting because Star Trek V also has religious elements in it, which is maybe why I like that film as well so much. But anyways, there's elements in there that they specifically did to make it clear to the audience, but you have to be open to receiving that or be aware of it to maybe see it. I don't know. But anyways, So specifically, what I would say about this film is Star Trek Generations, at its deeper thematic core,
The
specifically...
teenagers are coming up, Dave, so just
no worries.
keep going.
Okay, specifically at its core, in my opinion, is a Charles Dickens Christmas story. Specifically, more along the lines of, say, my personal favorite Charles Dickens book, which is A Christmas Carol, okay? There's a deeper thematic Christian themes in the visual imaging. Sorry. My throat's bugging me a bit, sorry. Everything from the heaven-like lighting, so heaven, everything from the heaven-like lighting now on board the Enterprise in this film that occurs once Picard and the audience learns of Picard's personal devastating loss. So that's a story arc in this film, that Picard suffers a personal loss. So once that happens, the lighting in the film represents that, and it's a sort of, not a magical, but kind of a Christmas heaven-like lighting that's
Like aura.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's not in any of the TV series. And I don't believe, like, I'm a big believer as somebody that went to film school and would prepare films and stuff, that nothing is random in film. That's just not the way it works. The director of this film and the people involved in the making of this film, they make very specific choices to get visual storytelling across. And even if we're not aware of the storytelling, it exists. And that's what I believe, that's my opinion on what I believe is going on here. This lighting is a stark contrast to the 7-season run of The Next Generation. We've never seen lighting like this on the Enterprise before. It's clearly a visual clue to the deeper Christian themes and Christmas themes in this Star Trek motion picture. And I love the film for that. I love the lighting. It is totally unique, but let me make it very clear. It's not that the makers of the film didn't know what they were doing, or they were confused and didn't know how to light something. Believe me, these people, this is their life. This is what they do for a living. This is totally purposeful. This was on purpose. Okay. So just back to that about A Christmas Carol and Dickens specifically. I love A Christmas Carol. That's always been one of my favorite books. And what's really neat about that book is it's really a short story. It's only 50 pages. You can read that book literally in an evening. And I've read it probably over the years since I was probably 17. I've probably read it like at least 5 times. I love that book. So anyways, immediately I picked up that there were similarities. I'm not saying it's exactly, like obviously the director isn't retelling A Christmas Carol. But to me, there are 3 main elements of Dickens' A Christmas Carol. One is Christmas family traditions. One is personal change. Scrooge obviously, through his character arc, goes through a personal change. And another key component of A Christmas Carol that I've always appreciated is this idea of personal forgiveness, of Scrooge coming to terms with his place in the world and forgiving himself essentially and moving forward in a positive way. So what happens in this movie is Picard suffers a kind of a, how would I describe it? Why not? A biblical personal tragedy of just, as somebody who's experienced tragedies in my life and stuff, and what I'm going through right now, I cannot imagine this, how hard this is for his character in the film. But basically, his brother and his nephew die in a fire, in a biblical, tragic, kind of unexpected fire, and it clearly hits Picard for a bounce here. Like it completely disrupts and destroys his life. It's actually a really strong story point. And we've never seen anything like that I can think of at that kind of personal level on either The Next Generation or any of the other Next Generation movies. When you really think about what happens, it's beyond tragic. So, and what's interesting about it is he has a conversation with Deanna where they basically communicate, Picard communicates to her how hard this has hit him. And specifically what the film presents to us, this idea that because Picard chose a life of service, which we love about him, that's what makes Picard such a stand-up character, but because he chose a life of service over a traditional personal life with a like a traditional family kind of idea, like with a wife and children and so forth, that now he feels somehow that the Picard line is ending and he didn't do his part. So he essentially, in the moment, regrets the choice that he made not to have pursued that, because he relied on his brother, because his brother had a nephew, to continue the Picard line, which is important to him because of his family lineage and so forth. That now he feels somehow that he has disappointed his family lineage. That's the gist of it, essentially. So this is what I wrote down. It's not a coincidence that Picard experiences in the Nexus a 19th century Charles Dickens Christmas. Right out of Charles Dickens' novel, It's a Christmas Carol. Everything from the room setting, the large Victorian Christmas tree and lighting, the clothes of the characters in the scene, to the traditional Dickens Christmas morning of children opening their Victorian wrapped Christmas gifts. This is clearly a visual representation of 19th century Charles Dickens' Christmas morning. This scene is thematically connected to both Dickens and Christian traditional Christmas. Not a coincidence imagery. It's obvious. This scene ties the film elements together. In the Nexus, Picard interacts with his nephew in an angelic, heaven-like way. It is my belief from watching this film dozens of times that the Nexus specifically represents a Christian heaven, because his nephew, who has passed away tragically and suddenly, is there for Picard to interact with, just the same as when you die. And the Christian belief is that those you have left behind before and so forth are there waiting for you, and that you interact with them. I think there's a real beauty to that idea, and I think that they purposely put that in there.
What is this? Where am I?
It took all day. Say Merry Christmas, Papa. See the presents? I love you, Father.
I love you too.
Come on, children, let's move back and give your father some room.
Cup of Earl Grey.
That would be perfect.
This one's for you.
Oh, thank you very much, Renee.
Merry Christmas, Uncle.
And Merry Christmas to you too.
Renee, can you help me with the table?
Renee. Come here.
In my opinion, the makers of this film have created the Nexus as a visual representation of Picard's deeply personal character arc. In this film, the Nexus for Picard and this film is a visual representation of heaven, including the lighting. In the Nexus, Picard interacts with his nephew in an angelic, heaven-like way. Picard is a man who suffers a tremendous loss in this film, and he is essentially coming to terms with saying goodbye to his nephew, this lost part of his life, and coming to terms with this loss. Everything in this film, from the lighting, the sound effects, to the angelic performances, to everything, to me, is a representation of heaven. Okay? Christmas has always been a time to reflect on what is important in life. With the Christmas Carol, the theme of a life not lived, in this case for Picard, not raising a family of his own, and continuing the Picard lineage, family name. A huge part of this film, like Scrooge, is Picard dealing with his personal choices in life. Like Scrooge, coming to terms with his place in this world and changing his outcome. Picard, by the end of the film, comes to terms with this. He comes to terms with the tragic loss of his brother and nephew, in part because his character arc in this film is the realization you have the power to define that. Picard states, "Someone once told me that time is a predator that stalks us all our lives, but I rather, time is a companion that goes along with us on the journey. It reminds us to cherish every moment because it will never come again. What we leave behind is not as important as how we lived after all. We are only mortal." Dickens was obviously making a statement that we have to embrace life as we only have one chance to do so. That scene with his nephew in heaven, I believe, is a really important moment in this film, because it's a beautiful moment where Picard gives Renee a last hug. This is Picard coming to terms with his loss and essentially saying goodbye to his nephew in heaven. This is heaven. This is to me the most important moment in this film. That's the gist of what I see with this film. Those are the themes, and yeah, I would say, like I said, spiritual or whatever, but those are the additional, more deeper underpinnings that I think are obviously setting that film in that Christmas Dickens world that the creators of this film are specifically pulling on Christian themes. That's what I see in this. So I think if you watch this film just as a surface level sort of thing, yeah, you know what, it doesn't have Christmas music. And yeah, there's a scene with a Christmas tree. You have to look a little bit deeper. And if you look a little bit deeper, then I think you're gonna see that there's a lot more meaning going on. This is a much deeper film, just like Star Trek V is a much deeper film, but again, that's a different thing. I'm not gonna get in there. Let's go down another rabbit hole, but might be a rabbit hole I go down because I love that film too, but for different reasons. But this might be a reason why some people respond to this film and see more to it than other people do, because even if they're not really aware of it, they pick up on it and they watch it and they're like, boy, that's weird lighting. Why would they light it like that? It doesn't even look like the TV show. And why does it look like that? It looks really, it's heaven-like. That's why they did it. They did it on purpose. Same with the themes in it. Obviously, I'd say the person that wrote this was Christian, because he definitely, or whoever wrote, I don't know if it was a man or a woman, I haven't looked into that, but it's clear to me that was something that was discussed and something that was on their thought. And none of this stuff is just sort of, oh, they don't know how to light a scene, or what an odd story element. They're trying to get a message across to us. And that's one of the things that every time I watch this movie, I pick up something new. And I love movies like that. Like, there's some movies that you watch where you watch it right away and you're like, oh my God, the themes are so specific and so purposeful that you know immediately what you're watching. Like a film that I would throw out like that, or a film that I would bring up like that, is Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. It's got themes to it as well, but they're very easy to pick up on, and it doesn't necessarily have to depend on like the visual imagery or stuff like that. Whereas this is a film that the visual imagery is as much a part of the storytelling as anything, and that's what I love about it. So I unapologetically love this film. So I hope what I've said to you makes sense, or that you understand what I'm saying, because I mean, it is a little bit different than just talking about Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, and that I love the more military aspects of it and so forth. So I'll just end with that. It's a film that I unapologetically love, and maybe, I'm not trying to change, like, to my friend that has issues with it because all it has is a Christmas tree in it. And just because a film has a Christmas tree in it doesn't mean it's a Christmas movie. In general, I would agree with that. If it didn't have these other elements, I'd be like, yeah, there's a Christmas tree at the back of the store. That doesn't make it a Christmas movie. But that's not what this film is. So if you're watching this film and that's what you're seeing, you're not looking at the bigger picture, or you're just looking at the surface and you're not looking beyond that. And I think that may be what's happening here with people, because I have seen other people respond like that, other people that I know, and I haven't gotten into it because it's like, I don't think you're really paying attention. But at the end of the day, it's definitely not National Lampoon's Christmas, which I love. That's one of my favorite Christmas movies, but it's definitely not that movie. So I'll just end with this. So that's it. That's done. But I'll just end with this, just really quick here. I speak to you now on behalf of myself and my beautiful wife, Julie, who's with me here today, directing me like she always is, supporting me, and my two boys at this most special time of year, because we are huge Christmas people. We love Christmas. At this most special time in the calendar year, when I say to you, please have a tremendous Christmas of faith, family, and love. May God bless all of you at Christmas and always. God bless you. Thank you. Trekkie Dave out. Trekkie family out. Since it's Christmas, I'll say Trekkie family out. So to all Trekkie family, God bless you. Have just a magical Christmas. I love Christmas. We love Christmas. And just have a great Christmas. And I'm glad I got a Christmas video out. Trekkie Dave out. And just so I can see here. Sorry, without my glasses, I'm blind. And just have a tremendous Christmas. I don't know what else to say. And hopefully this video, if you're a person that thinks this isn't a Christmas movie, you can watch or think about this video next time you watch and go, oh, that's interesting. Maybe that lighting was done on purpose, and maybe there's something the director's trying to tell me, because believe me, from my experience as a movie lover, the director's always telling me nothing is random. They're always telling you something. Trekkie Dave out.
Okay, see you in the new year.
See you in the new year.
Come on, children, let's move back and give your father some room.
Cup of Earl Grey.
That would be perfect.
This one's for you.
Oh, thank you very much, Renee.
Merry Christmas, Uncle.
And Merry Christmas to you too.
Renee, can you help me with the table?
Renee.